Welcome to the Anjana Sutta Academy, daily Srimad Bhagavatam reading. And today is 2022, May 17th. And our gross bodies are in Nubiharavan. Transcendental eye is the gross bodies. Oh, you can do this too, okay. I dressed the cable. Yeah, turn the big one. Okay. What's the one? Jai Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Gopi Janaba Girivara Gavi Yashodanandana Pratyajana Girivara Yashodanandana Pratyajana Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Narayanam Namaskrityam Narayana Narottamam Dev Saraswatam Vyasa Tato Jayamudiyalaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam First Canto, Chapter 13. Dhritarashtra leaves the home. Text 51. Dhritarashtra Sahabratra Gandharya cha Swabharaya Dakshinena Himavata Rishinam Ashramam Gatoho. Okay. Dhritarashtra Sahabratra Gandharya cha Swabharaya Dakshinena Himavata Rishinam Ashramam Gataha.
Dhritarashtra Sahabratra
Dhritarashtra Sahabratra
Gandharya cha Swabharaya
Gandharya Swabharaya
Dakshinena Himavata
Dakshinena Himavata
Rishinam Ashramam Gata
Rishinam Ashramam Gata Dhritarashtra Sahabratra Gandharya Swabharaya Dakshinena Himavata Rishinam Ashramam Gata. Dhritarashtra Saha. Along this, his brother, Gandharya, Gandhari also, Cha, and Swabharaya, his own wife, Dakshinena, by the southern side, Himavataha, of the Himalaya mountains, Krishnam, of the Rishis, Ashramam, in shelter, he has gone. O king, he's talking, this is Narada Muni talking to Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira has woken up, and as was his custom, he went to visit his uncle and aunt, but they weren't there. And the secretary also, Sanjaya, was also lamenting that they left without even informing him. So he was lamenting about how he wasn't able to take care of him. And Narada Muni came along, right? And basically said, you're the same as with Krishna chastises Arjuna. Okay, hey, Rabbi, hey, Pandit, that, And he says, hey, you yourself are in the jaws of death, and you're thinking you can protect somebody else. So he's continuing with this. He says, O king, your uncle, Dhritarashtra, his brother Vidura, and his wife Gandhari have gone to the southern side of the Himalaya mountains, where there are shelters for the great sages. Please repeat, O king, your uncle Dhritarashtra, his brother Vidura, his wife Gandhari, have gone to the southern side of the Himalaya mountains, where there are shelters for the great sages. So the Greece sages published report, which was written in India before he had seen America, before he had seen New York. To pacify the mourning Maharaj Yudhisthira, Narada first of all spoke from the philosophical point of view. And then he began to describe the future movements of his uncle, which he could see by his foreseeing powers. And thus he began to describe as follows. Shoto bi sapta birya vai svarduni sapta davyadat sapta nam prataye nana sapta shrota pachakshate. There's a whole lot of shrotas, saptas in this text. Oh my God, what happened here? I'm changing the size of it because it's too big. Oh, okay, my God. And back to 51. Next now 52. Okay. The place is called Shapta Shrota, divided by 7, because there the waters, the sacred Ganges, were divided into 7 branches. This was done for the satisfaction of the 7 great rishis. So there's a whole other story. Now, I have to look at the Puranic Encyclopedia and see the story there. Okay. On the banks of Shapta Shrota, Dhritarashtra is now engaged in beginning Astanga Yoga by bathing 3 times daily, in the morning, noon, and evening, by performing the Agni Hotra sacrifice with fire, and by drinking only water. This helps one control the mind and the senses and frees one completely from thoughts of familial affection. Yeah. So by the mercy of, what's his name? Nithisar, we were reading Shamasundar and Prabhupada's discussion about Carl Jung's philosophy, an idea that the self-realization means to integrate the unconscious aspect of our personality with the conscious aspect, and variety of things like that. So he also had an idea about Sankhya, dividing things up, and his process for doing it. So here it's mentioning Astanga Yoga, which in the Sanskrit, what is it here? Hutva, Agni Hotra sacrifice, Snatva, bathing. Okay. So there's no mention of Astanga Yoga in the text. Okay. Okay. So we're studying means that no, isn't there? Is there? No. Okay. So maybe this is from Sridhar Swami's commentary. Okay. But that's it. We're basically looking at karma, jnana, and yoga. Yeah. Which I don't know what is that. It's kind of, I don't know. It's a universal within the Vedic culture, Sanskrit culture. Is that kind of a universal analysis? Yeah. In your experience, have you read all the Vedas? Have you read all the sense? Have you read 6 darshan, Saddarshan?
Little bit.
Okay. Have you read all the Shaiva Agamas? Like that. Savages, Hindu savages. They should have heard a lot. Hindu savages. Purport. The yoga system is a mechanical way to control the senses and the mind and divert them from matter to spirit. The preliminary processes are the sitting posture, meditation, spiritual thoughts, asana, dhyana, and spiritual thoughts, dharana, manipulation of the air passing within the body, okay, pranayama, and gradual situation in trance. Okay, so meditation, maybe then dharana, samadhi. Facing the absolute person, Paramatma. Such mechanical ways of rising to the spiritual platform prescribe some regulative principles of taking baths daily 3 times, fasting as far as possible, sitting and concentrating the mind on spiritual matters, and thus gradually becoming free from the Vishaya, or material objectives. Okay. So when Maharaj Yudhishthira, Parikrit's being instructed in the very first step in God realization by Sukadeva Swami, he also recommends like this meditation, sitting down, everything else. But the content of that meditation, as we're reading, is the Virat Rupa. You should meditate on the taste of the fragrance of the earth, all these kind of things like that. So yeah, it's very natural, sitting and contemplating these things. I remember one time I went down to the bay, San Francisco Bay. There's a kind of parking area there. I was just looking at the ocean. I was just contemplating it. And all these thoughts were coming about how great it was. All the boats in the whole world resting on the ocean, right? And to them, it's probably as insignificant as a few pieces of straw or a few flakes of straw chaff, Wow. And how deep is it? Apparently now they found something deeper than the Mendano Trench. And the Mendano Trench is something like, I don't know, it's like if you're going 65 miles an hour, it takes you like 7 minutes to reach the bottom or something. That's a long way down. And of course, if you have to carry 1 bucket of water on your head, that's a lot. But if you have 7 miles of water on your head, but still there are creatures that live down there. And not just phosphorescent bacteria, but like animals that swim. Yeah. But there's nobody on the moon. Okay. Such mechanical ways of rising to the spiritual platform prescribe some regulative principles of free from Vishaya or material objectives. Material existence means to be absorbed in the material objective, which is simply illusory, which means that we're thinking about the future all the time, thinking about the future. We're not even really enjoying what we're eating, but we're thinking about, I want to take that next. I want to take that. What other gloves months? So where Sri Prabhupada says it means being absorbed in something. I'm absorbed in a million material objectives. I want this, I want that, which is a mode of action. Because in the mode of goodness, we're actually starting to become on the spiritual platform, which is simply illusory. Okay. House, country, family, society, children, property, and business are some of the material coverings of the spirit, Atma. And the yoga system helps one to become free from these illusory thoughts and gradually turn towards the absolute person, Paramatma. By material association and education, we learn simply to concentrate on flimsy things. But yoga is the process of forgetting them altogether. Wow. Modern so-called yogis and yoga systems manifest some magical feats, and ignorant persons are attracted by such false things, or they accept the yoga system as a cheap healing process for diseases of the gross body. But in fact, the yoga system is a process of learning to forget what we have acquired throughout the struggle for material existence. Dhritarashtra was all along been engaged in improving family affairs by raising the standard of living with his sons, by usurping the property of the Pandavas for the sake of his own sons. These are common affairs for a man grossly materialistic and without knowledge of the spiritual force. He does not see how this can drag one from heaven to hell. By the grace of his younger brother Vidura, Dhritarashtra was enlightened and could see his grossly illusory engagements. And by such enlightenment, he was able to leave home for spiritual realization. Srinarada was just foretelling the way of his spiritual progress in a place that was sanctified by the flow of the celestial Ganges. Drinking water only without solid food is also considered fasting. This is necessary for advancement of spiritual knowledge. A foolish man wants to be a cheap yogi without observing regulative principles. A man who has no control over the tongue at first can hardly become a yogi. A yogi and a bogi are two opposite terms. The bogi, or the merry man, where do we go here, who eats, drinks, cannot be a yogi, for a yogi is never allowed to eat and drink unrestrictedly. He may note with profit how Dhritarashtra began his yoga system by drinking water only and sitting calmly in a place with a spiritual atmosphere, deeply absorbed in the thoughts of Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. So yoga system, they were using different systems, like what is called free association. Say the first word that comes into your head, what is the response? Ink blocks, you see the pictures, and what do you see? Thematic, what's it called? Projection of your ideas and things. Yeah. So different techniques of psychology, and to try to understand who we are and become free from birth, death, disease, and old age. Mental disease, physical disease, and hypnosis. Freud was a terrible hypnosis, apparently, so he never got into using it. And Jung didn't use hypnosis much at all. He was especially having people just take the naturally occurring psychological material, in the dream states, and then talk about that, and then progressively draw pictures and try to express it like that, and so on. But he also was what was called, I can't remember the name of it now. It's like free dreaming or something, which they would allow. I think it was kind of like conscious dreaming, daydreaming. You would let the mind get into a situation again where the body was not introducing its information, just sitting in one place, these kind of things. Then allowing the mind just to go, kind of develop conscious daydreaming thing. And somebody also up in Africa, who was another European philosopher, also developed it. And so it's kind of thing I would like to talk with people who are expert on Jung, from our side of the bridge, which is the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati side, about what these things are. Because also Jung changed his ideas and his techniques and everything as he was, developing things and so on. So we should try to find out what he was doing, because other people were using these techniques and so on. Kamagayatri is talking about her, how she's been trained to deal with people. It's very interesting because you can relate these things to our tangible process and so on. So there are these tangible states. Jitasano, one who has controlled the sitting postures, yogic asanas, the breathing process, can turn the senses towards the absolute personality of Godhead and thus become immune to the contaminations of the modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. Jitasana, conquer the sitting postures. Jita Shvasha, one who has controlled the breathing processes. Pratyakrita, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara. Right? Yeah. Okay. So Piers Baba is justified saying Astanga Yoga. Bhavanaya. Okay. The preliminary activities of yoga are asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, etc. Dhritarashtra was to attain success in those preliminary actions because he was seated in a sanctified place and was concentrating upon one objective, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. Thus all his senses were engaged in the service of the Lord. This process directly helps the devotee to get freedom from the contamination of the three modes of material nature. So we chant Hare Krishna, we follow the four regular principles. So four regular principles are, material things that, they're not spiritual, following the four principles, but they're, by Krishna's arrangement, they're in a proper situation for chanting Hare Krishna. So if you're following four principles and chanting together, the chanting becomes very effective. Okay. Thus, even the highest mode of material nature, the mode of goodness, is also a cause of material bondage. And what to speak of other qualities, namely passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance increase the material propensities of hankering for material enjoyment. Yeah, yeah. And a strong sense of lust provokes the accumulation of wealth and power. Okay. So first is lust, what? And then you become greedy. Yeah. And once you become greedy and can't satisfy it, you become angry. Yeah. Which is more of ignorance, lust, greed, and anger. One who has conquered the two base mentalities and has raised himself to the platform of goodness, which is full of knowledge and morality. Yeah. Jnana and vairagya, knowledge and morality, cannot also control the senses. Okay. Maybe the eyes, the tongue, the ears, and nose. But one who has surrendered himself under the lotus feet of the Lord, as above mentioned, can transcend all influence of the modes of material nature and be fixed in the service of the Lord. Mam cha yo abhichareno bhakti yoga se. Sa kunam tapasitaite brahmabhuyaya kalpate. Yeah. Abhicharena bhakti. No. Undeviating bhakti. You transcend the three modes. Hey man, I know myself, how many devotees do you see so many times? Everybody around you is losing their head and blaming it on you. But you chanting whatever, you can keep yourself fixed so you're not getting involved in all this action and reaction and anger and frustration and fumbling and yeah. This process of turning the senses from material attachment to the loving transcendental service of the Lord is called pratyahara. And the very process is called pranayama. Ultimately, the very process is called pranayama, ultimately ending in samadhi, where absorption and pleasing the Supreme Lord Hari by all means. So what is the exact Sanskrit of it? It's two words, right? Pratyahara, nidrahara.
Yeah, it's the same.
Oh
Yeah, and Prati turns it around.
Okay.
So it's instead of taking,
yeah.
It's withdrawal.
Okay. Okay.
Ahara meaning to her means to take and ha means towards. So to take towards you.
Okay.
And then Prati essentially turns it around.
So in the beginning, you start playing the drum, and it's so gratifying. There's so much sense gratification that you're playing it, and you can't stop because complaining. Like that, yeah. Yeah. So then at a certain point, then you come to the point where now you're not the drum is not playing you. You're playing the drum. And you can control it, even though it's more gratifying to do this and that. You don't do it anymore because now you start to use it. So I think that's where we get pratyahara in our system. Prabhupada says for every process in the Ashtanga Yoga system, there's a complementary process in the Bhakti Yoga system. So now you start to use the drum and everything else. Because in the very beginning, it's very gratifying to address the deities in a certain way. You're attached. And you start to know, I won't dress Krishna the way I want to dress Krishna. I'll dress the way Krishna wants to be dressed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Vigyanatmani samyoja. Okay. Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate. There's a good word. Murari would have a hard. Many of these words he knows, but it's just because these are very Latin words. Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence. Wow, this is all Sanskrit words, Bhagavatam is translated. And then merge into the Supreme Being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness as a living entity with the Supreme Brahman. Being free from the blocked sky, he will have to rise to the spiritual sky. This is like a case for the Sanskrit. Vigyan Atmani Samyoja Kshetrajne Pravilapyatam Brahmani Atmanam Adare Katambaram Ivam Bare. Wow, there's alliteration there. Oh wow, my gosh. Vijnana, Vijnana, purified identity. Well, Mr. Harvard, how is that for Sanskrit translation? It's not a literal translation, is it? Again, Jnane means to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think knowledge. B, you could argue is purified.
Okay.
As in it's
Yeah.
intensified.
Okay. And Vijnana is knowledge.
Yeah. So it's purified knowledge, but jnana, the primary form of knowledge is knowledge of the self. So
Okay.
purified identity. We take jnana as identity and V as purification. Yeah. It's called.
But jnana can be identity. Okay. Because
There's one talk in Bhagavatam said that it's not that this symbol means this way or this symbol means. So
yeah.
when writing translated Shastra,
Yeah.
it has to be purification.
Oh yeah.
I'll give a taste on the chapter of Rita.
Yeah.
The Brahmanda of Rita, Jiva, Prabhupada takes the first two words from Brahmanda of Rita.
Yeah.
Translated two wrongs.
Yeah. Well, so many things. And also even here, Prabhupada's English before he came to the United States, and he says himself, it's difficult. So identity, meaning identification, who I am, purified. I mean, very well mean that Prabhupada may have meant purified identification, right? Because then it matches the big jnana, purified identification, identifying something. Many times with the suffixes, you can tell he's had to be corrected. And then Shamasuri, Hayagriva was correcting this. He wouldn't have been able to correct that. It's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Vijnana, Atmani, in intelligence. Okay. So Atma can mean intelligence also, mind, yeah. Samyoja, perfectly fixing. Yeah. Vijnana, Atmani, Samyoja. Wow. Okay. Kshetragne, in the matter of a living being. This is the knower of the field, right? Yeah. Kshetragne. So the whole thing is very much in terms of knowledge, no? On a very psychological level. Vijnana Atmani Samyoja Kshetragne Pravilapya. Okay. Pravi, two words, right? Lapya.
After, love can mean that merging or melding.
Okay. Pravilapya. So after merging the material concept into intelligence, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, of the living being, of the knower of the field. Okay, well, Tam, him, Brahmani in the supreme, Atmanam, pure living being, Ahadare, in the reservoir, Gata Ambara, sky within the block. Gata Ambara. Mr. Howard Wheeler didn't do a good job on this one. Okay.
So this Gandhara is hot in the sky.
Oh yeah.
And so there's a very famous metaphor that you break the pot and you recognize your oneness. So the pot is the abundance that the yogi has to.
So Gata is pot. Gata. Ambare. Sky. Oh wow. Sky within the block. Yeah, maybe it should be again. The typesetters did it wrong when they're tapping the type, and there are problem himself was just using. Wow. Sky within the block. Eva, like Ambare in the supreme. Yeah. So these are very general terminology, but very, very compatible with the Upanishads and this kind of impersonal description like that. Yeah. Okay. Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence, with the intelligence, huh? And then merge into the Supreme Being, okay, with knowledge of his qualitative oneness as a living entity, okay, with Supreme Brahman. Being free from the blocked sky, yeah, he will rise to the spiritual sky. Okay, right. The green bird will merge with the green trees in the oasis. Yeah, yeah. That's a good example, right? The green bird. Yeah. But yeah, the public says obviously the green bird is there. He's having a good time now, taking a bath and taking water, eating fruit. Yeah. Okay. Purport. The living being, by his desire to lord it over the material world and declining to cooperate with the Supreme Lord, contacts the sum total of the material world, namely the Mahatattva. And from the Mahatattva, his false identity with the material world, intelligence, mind, and senses is developed. This covers his pure spiritual identity. By the yogic process, when his pure identity is realized in self-realization, one has to revert to the original position by amalgamating the five gross elements, the subtle elements, mind and intelligence, and the Mahatattva again, thus getting freed from the clutches of the material Mahatattva. He has to emerge in the existence of the Supersoul. In other words, he has to realize his qualitative, he has to realize that qualitatively, he is non-different from the Supersoul, unless he transcends the material sky by his pure and identical intelligence, thus becomes engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the highest perfection and development of spiritual identity, which was attained by Dhritarashtra, oh yeah, by the grace of Vidura and the Lord. But he became a Dhira and not a Narada. The Lord's mercy was bestowed upon him by his personal contact with Vidura, and when he was actually practicing the instructions of Vidura, the Lord helped him to attain the highest perfectional stage. A pure devotee does not live on any planet of the material sky. But, okay, planet, you have cigar and cigarette, right? They came out with this new product because everybody was smoking cigars. That's all there was. And now they came up with a new product called a cigarette. Oh, I have a cigarette. And plain and planet. Yeah. So it's a part. You know, Bhu Mandala, Bhu was it Bhu, Bhuvar, Swa? It's called Bhu, the earth, the sky, and then the heavens. Yeah. So, these are the planes, right? But within the planes, there are planets. Yeah. And again, it's always this example, somebody who doesn't know what a bicycle is, it's like some savage from the jungles of the Amazon. Bicycle, they look at it, You can imagine that. It's like, it's even hard to see it because you have to, you can't see the spokes because you have a conceptual thing of this, So maybe you start identifying two flowers. Two flowers. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, Mr. Two Flower. Yeah, Captain Two Flowers. Okay. He rides on two flowers. Yeah. And then you try and put it in the concepts that you know, the intelligence that you know, and the mind and so on. So then it starts to develop and become a reality, how it just turns, that turns. You develop all these subtle things about this turns, this does that, the brakes do this, and after a while it's a whole, mental, intellectual and mental conception. And so then if you start to go backwards, and finally you forget what a bicycle is, right? Yeah. So when you're getting old, either you're becoming senile or spiritually advanced. I'm not sure if myself know this. You can't quite figure out whether you're becoming senile or spiritually advanced. A little of both, I guess. Okay. And then look at a bicycle for a few minutes before you realize what it is. Yeah. So this is what's happening, because this is where we're very. One question that comes up is, how much did Jung believe that all mental functions were a product of the gross body. I think he really believed in, that you come in this lifetime. And it's just very, I don't know how much he got it straightened out himself, because even he said, I've heard even from people, I've heard from, what's his name, Ramon Mojica, who was one of Jung's disciples, and he said directly that all my ideas are provisional. Yeah, he's an honest guy. All my ideas are provisional. They tried to say, oh, Jung got it all figured out. This is what it is. Now we can commercialize it and make it into a product and sell it. He hated that. It's almost always happens when the Acharya leaves his body. So anyway, he was trying to understand this analysis, this Sankhya, and get out of it the same way, similar way. So how much he realized that the material world doesn't exist, kind of. Yeah. There are no cars or automobiles and all these things here. They just don't exist. As far as I understand, all the three modes of material nature do is give, what do you call it? The intelligence projects onto these things, maybe the Paramatma or something. And the three modes of material nature gave them a past and a future. Yeah. And because of that, the current moment is mixed with those things. And so then the mode of goodness becomes contaminated. There's nothing wrong with goodness. I kept bothering me. What's wrong with goodness? It's good. Yeah, pure goodness, yeah. But then Prabhupada says the material world is always mixed with passion and ignorance. You're lamenting about how things went, you wish they were different, and you're hankering, so ignorance and passion are almost always there. And that makes the present moment seem real. It makes the microphone seem real because it has so many, it may fall, it may break, that will cost money, so yeah. So many things. Yeah. And so you start withdrawing your intelligence from these things, and it starts to become a light. Yeah. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. And you have, by realizing, we have to realize all these things by chanting japa. Yeah. Passing on goddess. Okay. Mahatma. Okay. A pure devotee does not live on any planet of the material sky, nor does he feel any contact with material elements. His so-called material body does not exist, being surcharged with the spiritual current of the Lord's identical interests. And thus he is permanently free from all contaminations of the sum total of the Mahatattva. He is always in the spiritual sky, which he attains by being transcendental to the sevenfold material coverings by the effects of his devotional service. The conditioned souls are within the coverings, whereas the liberated soul is far beyond the covering. Wow. So the question, we're following Dhritarashtra. Huh?
I don't know if the question is common, but it's just interesting. It's something that I thought about, and it came up in the conversation between often this chapter or years ago. Because this chapter is focusing clearly on Dhritarashtra, there's no question about
Dhritarashtra. You keep rubbing your nose when you're talking, so it becomes a little bit difficult.
this chapter is focusing clearly on Dhritarashtra. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And how it achieves liberation. But in order to get the point was Maharaj Yudhisthira's feeling this grief. And it's just interesting that never really is there any mention that when Dhritarashtra gets song and Narayan gets song and during the song that Kunti also was going to
Yeah.
that would come down here.
Well, it does.
I really know.
No, it's in here too. Yeah, when how's it go? When Vidura comes back, it says that everybody received him, including the ladies, and it names them. Then the purport probably goes through and gives a biography of each of the ladies and stuff. And then Kunti, he describes that she went off with Gandhar, and did austerities and fasted. No, somebody else. It wasn't Gandhari, I don't think. They fasted, they started eating once every 2 weeks or something, and finally they left their bodies too. Yeah. It's like short.
But she lived at the same time.
It doesn't say when she left, but it said at the end or something like that. I can look it up here. Yeah. I will go Control F, Kunti. And it shows up 20 times. Okay. 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 Yeah, here it is. Okay. Krita, daughter of Maharaj Sudasena, the sister of Vasudeva. Look, she was adopted by Maharaj Kunti Devi, Kunti Bhoja, and therefore, okay, goes down to the whole history. Okay. Okay. Her prayers for the Lord after the Battle of Kurukshetra, when Lord Krishna was going home, are excellently explained. Yeah. Later, she went to the forest with Gandhari. Yeah, yeah. For severe penances, she used to take meals after each 30 days. She finally sat down in profound meditation and later burned to ashes in a forest. So she's going with Gandhari. That's before Dhritarashtra went home. Maybe. Maybe she was falling. I say this, that's all I know.
So she went. This wasn't because if you assume maybe from the example, it's just interesting how there's many other discussions about knowledge.
First, yeah. So maybe, because when did she? Because she maybe with Gandhari, she did austerities and stuff like that. They came back, and then finally Gandhari left with Dhritarashtra, and then left his body. And then after that, then she also, maybe when Krishna left with the queens and everything else or something. I don't know. Yeah. One encyclopedia. Okay, how are we doing here? Okay, one more purport. Because you are German. No, there's any comments? Yeah, please, yes.
What destination did Dhritarashtra get after he went to Bali?
It says that Prabhupada talks about Dhira, Narottam, and Sannyas. And Narottam is somebody who achieves the highest destination of becoming a servant of Krishna. But it says that even though Vidura was favoring him, he couldn't achieve Narottam, and only became Dhira, detached from everything, because it was offensive to the Pandavas, and Krishna was taking that seriously. So he had to, undergo some more, austerities to purify himself. So I don't know, maybe it would seem that he took birth again or something, someplace. Maybe he took birth in Krishna Lila, in the Gora Lila. Yeah. Somebody in Dhritarashtra in a previous lifetime. Yeah. We know that what's his name? Chankazi was. In the previous lifetime, Chankazi was Kamsa. Yeah. Kamsa. Yeah. So maybe Dhritarashtra was there also. When Yudhishthira leaves his body, I think it's very brief. There's almost no description of the Sankhya and stuff. And here there's some more description. And then, of course, in the second canto, which people can study before coming to flow, the four principles. We can talk to, in general. Then there's description of how Brahma describes to Narada Muni, the material nature. And then he goes into the Sankhya with much more detail. And how much he goes into the psychological elements. But one thing is that the castes, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, those are a part of the Virat Rup. So the Virat Rup also includes psychological elements that are fixed. And when you put into a certain position, then that becomes a part of your subtle body. So automatically you feel, and you get the intelligence and the character that goes with it. And these, I think, would match up very much with Jung's experiences of archetypes and things like that. And of course, he was beyond the level of just archetypes. He was also Prabhupada says Atma and Paramatma. He's called the collective subconscious, which is composed of archetypes, and then the individual subconscious. Very, very close to realization of these things. My perspective, how's it go on? How's it go? Hiran knows Virat Rup, as I understand it, Hiranyagarbha, and then Paramatma. And so Jung was kind of on this Hiranyagarbha level of seeing a very, very potent, the virile potency behind the Virat Rup, but not on the level of Paramatma where you can communicate in that sense. Yeah. But to be on that level and experiencing that and seeing people and seeing their karma and stuff, you would just again meet people and have these experiences of what their karma was and everything else. Because they would just be shocked when he was like, very deeply when he was talking about Victor Raska. Jung said nobody is born tabula rasa. In Spanish, the word to scratch is rasgar. Okay, yeah. So tabula means tablet, raska, scratched slate, which means blank. So nobody's born with a blank slate. We're all born with, Okay, so it seems you have to be something, kind of beyond the gross body then. That the subtle elements are existing and carrying us like that. So then you show up. You come. You stick your hand here, stick your hand into the puppet, play around for a while, pull it out, and move on and come. Another puppet, and stick it out. Yeah. So all this karma, things are going on in this Sankhya description. Yeah.
I find it interesting that a couple of purports of Prabhupada said twice that yoga is the process of forgetting.
Yeah, I got to get the same things. Yeah.
And it's the universe of the process of bringing nondescript or undifferentiated matter and differentiating it.
Yeah.
And then the child who's in the womb is undergoing the same process of collecting the 5 elements.
Yeah.
And distinguishing each feature.
Yeah.
And the yogi's job then, and the mind is doing the same thing. The yogi's job then at the end of one's life is to reverse that process. As sound from sound, the touch, and then to take that and revert it back into that, and then the yogi is set free at that point. Wow. But it's such a striking thing because normally people think of yoga as a process of being conscious, aware, and gathering more knowledge. But Prabhupada is describing it as a process of forgetting, letting go.
And also because our process is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, which is remembrance, and that's meditation, and that's the process. And so here is the Smaranam is we're giving up Smaranam. Of keeping conscious of things, remembering them. The mind is always jumping around. What's going on? Keeping our seeing. And so we're giving up the Smarana, for the material world, forgetting the material world. Yeah. It's a much more. Most of meditation, whatever. But remembering, but people understand the word remembering. And then that's meditation. Remembering.
Just one of our journey when Krishna study to go with and it's a step and
Yeah. The Stanga Yoga system is the mind is too dangerous. And he starts giving him, then contemplate the tiger, the lion, all these things. Yeah. And then progressive. Okay.
I seem to remember hearing one time that Prabhupada said actually all these local processes, they're inimical towards bhakti. Would that be the right thing? Because they're without the bhakti, without the devotion, they're super made mechanical.
Well, because ultimately they're all egoistic. What is the most difficult yoga asana? No, Dandavat. So it's the most difficult. And it's very, very powerful preaching kind of thing. Obviously, it's very rare to find a yogi who can do this. It is so proud. So proud. I mean, yogis more proud than most people, or else the Buddhists have become very proud of being humble. I mean, doing these people is very difficult because they're professional humbles. You know, I know for Bob Bickford, he's a professional humble guy. And it made 3 years until finally he stopped taking the Sunday feast because of sugar or something. Become and he was a real mental guy in the occupation army in Japan and everything else. So anyway, he was a disciple of Maharaji. You know, so talking about stuff, he was describing his morning program, how he got up in the morning and was gonna before he went in to take his shower, he took a half a can of Hunt's, whatever it is, vegetarian green beans and put it in a pot of this and that, and then how's it go? They put it on the pilot light, so it didn't have to light the thing because he used a pilot light, humble, and the whole thing was there, and he took his beans and as I go, and then the words came to my mouth. I said, yeah, and then you offer them to Krishna, right, Bob? Like that, and he said, for sure, because he could see he was attached to his, being good and all this kind of stuff, at that point. And you can see also that if you offered it to Krishna, he wouldn't be attached. It took 3 years, 3 years to get to that point of getting, the mind. Yes. My cat, Mr. Cat, he grew up. I saved him from being drowned. Anyway, he grew up, became an evil tomcat. When we moved into a new house, he would defecate in the fireplace, and catch me run away. Just had a bucket of water there. So finally, I caught him flat-footed when he was defecating. He couldn't run. Everything else. I had the bucket of water, and I was going to throw it. And looking at him, he knew, and I knew that after that he wouldn't be able to do it again because he'd had this traumatic experience. And he knew it. I knew it. I got it with this water with it go whack. He ran away. And so he never did it again. So the psychological experiences and the gross body and everything else. During the hippie era, everything else, people tried to develop this psychological perspective and Jung and everything else, but they just could not get it in the West. And some things came down, like the Gayatri and stuff. They're using some of these principles, but and so basically, before if somebody has a problem, there's 3 people on the team: psychiatrist, social worker, and a psychologist. That was a team, and the person in charge of the team was psychiatrist, psychologist, a social worker. Who was the person in charge? Psychiatrist. Because we know ultimately everything is a product of matter and the chemicals of what's happening, everything else is just superficial. But now if psychology is falling apart so much, I've talked to professional psychologists, you can't pay your income with it. So usually what it is the person with a master's social work degree, right, is taking over the responsibility for psychological work. Yeah. So this is the West. Yeah. So, okay,
This conference will now be recorded.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for attending. See you soon.